Hi, can I help you? Yes, pet me. Any pets? Is that what you need, our pets? You act like I never pet you. My baby girl. You pet me just not enough, because if you have both hands, you should pet me with both hands. Yes, baby girl. But I have to record. I have to talk about Ponyo on a cliff by the sea. What's that? It's a fish tail. Her. I like fish. Well, you can't eat this fish, although she likes ham and you like ham, so I guess that's something. Apparently I insulted her taste in ham. So, time to talk about Ponyo for the next Studio Ghibli movie. This one was directed by Miyazaki. It came out in 2009. It is called Ponyo, or the Japanese title that it was released under was Ponyo on the Cliff. By the sea is kind of added in there to a degree, because that's like there's the little kid song that kind of goes along with this movie that is very adorable, but would not be something I would want to listen to for an exceedingly long amount of time. So this movie is so it is kind of like a take on I kind of take it as like a take on the Little Mermaid story, hence why I have a Little Mermaid shirt. Also, I don't have a Ponyo shirt. I don't have shirts for a lot of the different Studio Ghibli movies. I found several, but a lot of them are more expensive, or they just don't really have a design on them that I like, as was the conversation I had with my mother. I was like, yeah, I like these, but they're either too expensive or they're just not a design I like. And I really wish I could find better ones. But Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea is a little bit about, it's kind of like, in my opinion, this kind of Miyazaki's version of telling the Little Mermaid story. You know, I mean, like, I've talked about the Little Mermaid story multiple times. You know, Hans Christian Andersen did the kind of the original iteration of it and everything. And of course, Disney has, of course, the Ariel version. And, you know, One Piece even has it when it comes to Shirahoshi and everything with the Fishbone Island. And lots of other different places have done like their own takes on how to make the Little Mermaid, or how to do like a version of a Little Mermaid. This is kind of more one of like an innocent setup of it, of like, you know, first love and her. I found a toy. Okay, chew your toy. So I take it as that. It is also, you know, just about a little girl who falls in love with a little boy, so it's, you know, childhood crush type of a thing. So, okay, into this. So, the movie starts with this little goldfish type thing, whose name in the beginning is Brunhilde. So, calling back to, you know, Norse and Viking and, you know, Valkyrie mythology there. So it kind of starts with her, but first we get like this look of, you know, this, you know, beautiful world underwater. You know, part of this movie is to display like the beauty of the ocean and everything like that. And you know, we go through the water, go down to the depths, and we see this interesting looking boat type of a thing, or this underwater vessel, and then we see this guy, you know, dripping certain things into the ocean, different elixirs and stuff into the ocean. And this man's name is Fujimoto. He is a once human that has become a wizard scientist and is basically kind of married to the ocean, I guess is a good way of putting it. And he is the father of Brunhilde and all of her little numerous sisters. And everything like that. We never get names for any of them. They're just very numerous in number, and they're adorable and follow Ponyo. By the way, Brunhilde gets renamed Ponyo during the course of the movie. But what ends up happening is, so Ponyo kind of escapes. I'm just going to refer to her as Ponyo. Ponyo escapes, and everything like that. and she starts to make her way up to the surface. Maybe I should have had you bring up a quieter toy. This one is Crinkle. It is for Puppy. I know you like it. So Ponyo starts to make her way up to the surface, and when she reaches the surface, she's kind of like riding on the back of this jellyfish that takes her all the way up to the surface and everything. And when she's there, she kind of looks up. She's kind of like, something catches her eye, and it's this, this like hill that goes up, kind of like this cliff. And there's this house at the top of the cliff, and there's this little boy coming down from the house and making his way down the path to the water. This little boy's name is Sosuke. Not to be confused with Sosuke Aizen for Bleach fans. Not the same thing. I think there's also a Sosuke in Naruto, but I've never watched Naruto, so I don't know. I don't know enough about that to make that observation. But Sosuke is making his way down to the little cove area at the bottom of the cliff by their house. He's got like his little boat with him. I guess he's just gonna test it in the water or whatever. It's never explained. And Ponyo kind of sees him, and then there's this ship that comes by, and the ship is using a net to try to dredge up a bunch of the trash that's caught in the caught within the sand. Initially you would think that it's trying to catch fish, but I'm like, given how it's dragging in the ground in the sand, it's not going to catch a lot of fish. And it doesn't. I believe it's supposed to be like cleaning up a bunch of this trash and everything like that, the human junk and everything like that that's ended up in the harbor, and it's cleaning that up. And Ponyo gets caught up in it and gets trapped in a jar, and manages to get out of the net, but is still trapped in the jar, and ends up right next to where Sosuke is when he gets down to the beach. So he carefully goes out into the water, picks up the glass, picks up the jar, tries to get Ponyo out of it, and then he ends up getting chased by a wave with eyes, and it kind of like comes after him, and it kind of chases him off the cliff a little bit, and then he's just like, okay, that was weird. And then he's like, okay, well, I got to get this fish out of the jar. So he like takes a boulder and he like breaks the glass on the jar, breaks the jar carefully. Ponyo is not hurt in any of this, but he's like worried that she's dead. And as he's holding her, she ends up licking the blood off of his thumb, because he cut his thumb when he was trying to break the jar open. He cut his thumb. And, so he takes Ponyo out. And he's like, okay, I need to get you in water. And as he's going back up the cliff, more waves show up with eyes that like follow him up the cliff. And he makes his way up by his house again. And his mother's like calling out to him and everything like that. And she's just like, come on, Sosuke, it's time to get going. I'll be in the car and everything like that. By the way, the mom's name is Lisa, which is adorable because that is my sister's name. So that makes me happy. And so Sosuke takes his little bucket and starts filling it up with water and puts, Ponyo in the bucket, and Ponyo kind of wakes up and starts swimming around and ends up, it's just like, he's like, oh, good, you're okay. And then she spits water at him, which is just adorable. And while this is going on down in the bottom, under, in the ocean, the little waves come back to where Fujimoto was, to where her father was, and tells her that, or the waves tell him that, like, Ponyo was, taken up there by a human, and he's like, oh no, that's not good, and he's like, ah! By the way, I love the fact, and I'll mention this when I get to the cast, obviously, but I love the fact that Liam Neeson is playing Fujimoto, and like we're all so used to him playing these really badass roles of like Ra's al Ghul for Batman, and for in Taken, and like Zeus, and Aslan, and in Narnia, and all these other stuff that we're just like really used to him playing Qui-Gon Jinn in Star Wars and everything like that. And he's just like, I get to play a father that talks to the ocean. And is in love with the ocean and has really weird fashion sense. So it's like that's what he gets to do. So he's just like, I'm really hoping he jumped at the chance to play the role. Not that he hasn't played other funny roles, like he's hosted SNL and was very funny in that, everything like that. But it's just this fun little bit to see what's going on. To just have him play this very different role, but he's still a very protective father. And I guess it is a little bit of, it is kind of extra funny because, of course, with the Taken movies, it's, I have a very particular set of skills and I will use them to find you and everything like that. And in this case, he has a very particular set of skills where he is like this wizard and he can like create like sentient waves and he will use them to find his daughter. And I'm just like, it's a particular skill set either way. One of them involves guns, the other ones involve waves. So, varying degrees of interesting there. From there, so he's just like panicking about that. Also, Tina Fey voices the mom. There are so many different actors in this and actresses in this that I just adore the fact that it's like they're in a Ghibli movie and it made me so happy. By the way, this movie came out during my last year of high school because it came out in 2009 and I graduated in 2010. So it's just like I went to go see this with one of my high school friends for the first time. And we both enjoyed it. I mean, it is a little bit more on the child side of friendly stuff, like the way that like Totoro is and stuff, not as like high aspect, action as like, Howl's Moving Castle or, Princess Mononoke is, but it's still really, really good and it's still really adorable. So we get to Sosuke and his mom, who are now in their car driving down their little winding path down the cliff to get down to the town where they live, the town by where they live. And this is a town that is like, it's a fishing town, but it's also like a town that involves like the marine, the Japan's version of like the Marines kind of, because Sosuke's father is like, he works on one of the military ships that's out there. Sailing around the island and everything like that. So like there's that connection there and everything like that. And Sosuke's like telling his mom about like the fish that's in the bucket, and he's just like, I found her and I'm gonna call her Ponyo because I think she's magic and everything like that. And he's like, she licked my thumb and it's all better now and all of that stuff. And the mom's like, okay. I would also be like, look at the fish. Why does the fish have a face? That doesn't seem normal. That doesn't seem normal at all. Why does the fish have a face? And so they start trying to eat their breakfast. But before this had happened, before they start heading down the hill, when Sasuke is getting in the car, Fujimoto has like made his way up onto like the beach and up onto the cliff, and he's like working his way like through like the grass by their yard, and he keeps like spraying like stuff onto the grass. And Lisa, the mom, is like, we don't use a weed killer around here, so please stop spraying it all over the place. And he's like, this is not weed killer. This is the finest ocean water. It's so I don't dry out on land. And I'm like, you're not a fish. By the way, I want Fujimoto's backstory. I want that in something where it's just like, okay, how did he meet the ocean? How did he fall in love with the ocean? How did he become a wizard? How did he plan all of this? How did he do all of this stuff? I want his backstory. In something, please. That just sounds amazing. And if it's ever anime, can we please get Liam Neeson to come back and play the character, because that's just so funny. So she's just like, well, Lisa's just like, well, yeah, whatever, just don't use any of it, don't use any of the weed killer. And she drives off, and he's just like, darn it. And he has to like, he steps onto the dry land, and then he's just like, oh no, so, like squirts the water bar at his feet, and he's just like, oh no, and he like runs back down the cliff. So as Sosuke and his mom are driving down the cliff, Sosuke tries to, she's got like sandwiches for them to eat for breakfast because she's trying to get to work and she has to get him to school. And he's like, he tries to give Ponyo some bread and she just like doesn't want it. And then he's gonna try to offer her like a piece of ham, and she just jumps out of the bucket, grabs the ham right out of the sandwich with her teeth and drags it back down to the bucket and just starts devouring the ham. And he's like, I guess she likes ham. Which is just adorable. And then by the time they get to the so it's Lisa works at like the senior center where they have, like where seniors can come during the day so they're not at home alone and everything like that, which I like that concept. So they have like, that's where she works, and then Sosuke goes to like the preschool slash kindergarten thing that's like right next door, and so it's like one stop thing. Also, there's a bit of a dichotomy of having like this preschool type thing slash daycare where this is kind of where you go when you're a kid, and then the senior center is right next door. um, so that's just kind of funny. It's like where you kind of begin your life and where you kind of end your life to a degree. So we have that. So Sosuke goes over and he actually like hides the bucket in like the bushes by like the senior center, and like covers it with a leaf so that way there's no like cats can't try to get to Ponyo and everything like that. So he's like hiding her so she's like out of the way so he can go and talk to his teacher. And he goes inside and he's like trying to wait for the teacher, and one of the other little girls comes up to him. And Sosuke is apparently a very popular little boy in class because there's both two girls like both come up to him and try kind of like, I guess, childhood version of flirting with him, which is just funny. And one of the girls, Sosuke is like, I'm busy, and the other girl is like, you're not busy, you're 5. And I'm like, yeah. And so like Sosuke doesn't get the chance to talk to the teacher, so he goes back out and he checks on Ponyo. And he thinks for a moment that like she died while he was inside, and he's just like, oh no, oh no. And then she like wakes up and she's like, no, I'm fine. Or well, she's not talking, but she like squirts water at him to prove that she's fine. And he's like, oh good, you're okay. And then the little girl that was talking to him earlier in the nice dress comes over, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, you're not. And she's like, you're not supposed to have stuff on property. And he's like, no, these bushes are on the senior citizen side, on the senior center side of the property, so it's fine. And then he shows her Ponyo, and then the girl like insults Ponyo. She's like, that is the most boring fish I have ever seen. And then Ponyo just takes that very, very personally and squirts water at the girl, which then just makes her cry because she just got squirted with water by a fish and it ruined her dress. Admittedly, her mother made the dress, but she was also very rude and insulted, like, essentially what is, in this, from her perspective, like Sasuke's pet. Not that he necessarily treats Ponyo like a pet, but still, it's that concept from like the girl's perspective. He still insulted Ponyo. So then he runs across to where like the senior center is, and tries to like refill the bucket. And after that's all done, he's like, yeah, it's not good to judge people based on their appearances. That was her fault, and so it's not your fault that she got squirted. He's just like, okay, that depends on the perspective of who's doing this and whose side you're on. She doesn't like it because she's crying and trying to complain to the teacher about it and everything. So while he's over in the senior citizen area, the he actually knows all of the different ladies that come and stay at the senior center because he's like probably grown up with his mom working there and like knows them a lot and everything like that. And of course treats them very respectfully and everything like that. And they're just like, he goes over and he starts trying to talk to them and show them Ponyo and everything like that. And they're just like, oh, she's adorable and everything like that. And one of the ladies is voiced by Betty White. What was her name? What is one name for the because I know that Toki is one of the ladies. She's the lady that's like in the electric wheelchair. And then I don't remember the name of the one that is voiced by Betty White, because the one that's in the wheelchair, Toki, is voiced by Lily Tomlin, who I adore. But the other one is voiced by one of the other ones is voiced by Betty White, and I cannot remember what her name is. But so there's like, and rest in peace, Betty White. You've been immortalized in a Ghibli movie. You've been immortalized in so many things, but you're also in a Ghibli movie, which makes me very happy. So Sosuke is like showing Ponyo to like the old women, the old ladies, and they're like, oh, she's so pretty. And then Toki comes over and she's just like, oh, what's this? And he like shows her that, and she's like, oh, it's got a human face, throw it back in the ocean now before it brings a tsunami. It brings tsunamis. And then like Ponyo is insulted by this and then spits water at Toki. And then Sosuke like runs off with the bucket down, because the senior center has like another area that leads down to the a little cove area by the ocean, and he goes down there, and his mom's down like, Sosuke, get back here and apologize and everything. And Sosuke goes down to the water with Ponyo. I think he's just intending to hide. I don't think he's intending to try to like dump her back in the ocean. But what happens is Fujimoto is watching and sends out his little sentient wave things to rush the cove area around Sosuke, knock the bucket out of Sosuke's hand, and Ponyo gets whisked away in the water. Sosuke, upset by this, tries to go out and tries to get her. Lisa sees this, runs down, and drags Sosuke back up to the senior center and everything like that, as he's just crying and everything like that. Later that day, we see that Sosuke is still very like upset about this, very just like kind of like sad about all this, and they're getting groceries, and then they go back home, and she got like ice cream to try to cheer him up, and she's just like, well, I mean, maybe it's better that Ponyo's back in the ocean. I mean, like, she's a goldfish. She's not meant to live in a bucket. She's meant to be in the ocean and everything like that. And he's like, okay. And they get back home, and the mom's like, yeah, you're not going down by the ocean anymore today. No more ocean today. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he comes up with the idea of trying to show Ponyo where they live, because he, in case she comes back. So he, puts his little pail on top of like the gate by their house, so that way Ponyo can see it if she comes back. There's also a point earlier on when they were driving down through the town to get to where, get to the senior center and the school, where, Sosuke, was like holding up the bucket to show Ponyo where their house was. So Ponyo kind of knows where they live. From there, we get to see, again, Ghibli just being amazing when it comes to, animating food. Lisa is trying to cook dinner and everything like that, and they get a call on their phone because, like, his dad's supposed to be home that night, because, as I said, the dad is part of, like, a military thing where they, patrol the island and everything like that. And the dad calls, and he's talking to Sosuke, and he's like, I caught another run. Do you think you can help me with mom? And he's like, nope, you're on your own. And like the mom, gives the phone to Lisa, and Lisa's like, what do you mean you got another run, Koichi? You've taken too many in a row. Sure, abandon your wife and child up here on a cliff. And she gets very angry, and she storms over, and she like pulls out, she like jabs the food into the counter and everything like that. And she's like very angry. And she's like, come on, Sosuke, let's get out of here and, like, I guess go drive off or go eat something else somewhere. And he's like, but what if Ponyo comes back? And she's just like, nah. And she goes over to the fridge, opens up a beer, which just, like, fizzes all over the place. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't blame her for that. Comfort food. Earlier on, there was a moment when he's talking to the senior citizens where he's like explaining what happened with Ponyo, and he's like, her name is Ponyo. She likes to eat ham, and she can do magic. I got a cut on my thumb, and it went away because she licked it. And the Betty White lady is like, oh, maybe she could use her magic to fix my hips and back. And then the other lady is just like, I'd let a fish lick me if it would get me out of this wheelchair. Okay, so Yoshi is the name of the one that is played by Betty White. And then Keiko, whatever, is the name of one of the other ladies that's part of the group. So we get all that. So Sosuke's dad is not able to come home that night. And, Lisa is not happy about this. Not that I blame her in the slightest. And what ends up happening is that night, the dad, when the dad's ship sails past the house, they will use like the Morse code flasher things to like answer back at them, so they can like have like a conversation that way. So what ends up happening is like, Sosuke is waiting, and he has like a little captain's hat and everything like that, and he's like watching for the ship to show up, and the dad's like, flickering the answer of, hi and everything like that, and I'm sorry and all of that. And Sosuke, the mom's like kind of just like laying in the background on the floor, like hugging the pillow, like, I do not want to be here, but I have to be here type of a thing. She's not happy. And Sosuke, starts doing the clicking on the little light thingy. Porco uses something similar in Porco Rosso, where he uses like the flashing Morse code type thing to communicate back and forth with either one of the gangs or with one of the other pirates. The pirate gangs or one of the other pilots that he ends up interacting with. He like uses that to like communicate back and forth over a distance, since it's really hard to hear each other yell over a plane. And everything like that. So it's like, and these are like real things that like people would use for communication. And this way, it's a visual version of like SOS type stuff of Morse code. And starts doing that, and the dad is like, okay, yeah, and Sosuke's like communicating back and forth to the mom, and he's just like, Dad says he's sorry and he loves us. And he's like, what do you want to reply? And the mom starts spelling BUGFOFF, and the boy starts like clicking it off on the thing, and the dad just like, oh, that's not good. Dad's like, oh, I'm in trouble. And the dad like, it's just like, he's like, he's again like, he's sorry and everything like that, and the mom just like kind of like huffs, sits up, comes over, and just like really, really fast on the thing, like, bug off, bug off, bug off, bug off, bug off, which I love. I love that bit in the movie. That's great. If you argue with your spouse over Morse code, which is just funny. And the dad then like lights up the ship with like, it looks like Christmas lights, but it's just like lights up the ship really nicely. And Sosuke's like, nice one, Dad. It's like, good job, type of a thing. And Lisa's just like huffs, goes back into the house. And then Sosuke is like, clicking off on the thing, good luck. And the dad's like, yeah, thanks. Loves and hugs and kisses and everything like that, as like the ship is like going out of range for being able to do the clicking signal and everything like that. And like, he's really like, the dad is really proud. Koichi was the dad's name. He's really proud that his son is able to like, run the clicker on his own. So like, Sosuke knows like Morse code setup and that type of stuff, which is kind of cool in that regard, because he's like 5. And I'm like, I don't know if any of my nieces or nephew would have been able to do that when they were 5. Then again, I also wouldn't have trusted them to be alone at 5, and Sosuke gets left alone later. Sometimes I don't know if I want to let them have them be alone now, and they're all teenagers or more, and I'm still like, I don't know if I trust them to be alone, type of a thing. I love you guys if you watch this. I love all of you. But what ends up happening is, Sosuke goes back in the house, and they turn the lights on, because like they have to have them off when they're doing the Morse code thing so the dad can see it. And he goes back inside, and like his mom, Lisa's just kind of laying on the bed, kind of like flopped on the bed, just like, and he like starts petting his hair, and he's just like, I know Dad breaks his promises a lot, but he tries and everything, and I'm just, I just, he wishes his dad, would be better about that, to try to like cheer up Lisa and everything. And he's just like, and he's like petting, like petting his mom's hair, and he's just like, I made a promise to Ponyo that I would protect her, and I broke it. He's just like, he didn't break it. He didn't have the chance. He didn't have the choice in the matter. The choice was taken from him in that regard. In regards to that. And Lisa is just kind of like looks up at him, and then grabs him, and then like kind of like wrestles with him within a moment, and she's like, you are such a good kid, and like sits up, and she's just like hugging him, and she's like, how are you such a good kid? Like, you're just so good and everything like that. And she, so that kind of like cheers her up, and then they just like start turning all the lights on in the house, and she's like, how about we have dinner and then, dessert and then dinner, because it's been a backwards kind of day. So, they have like a fun little night that way. We cut down to the ocean, and we see that Fujimoto is trying to, get Ponyo to, I guess try to like forget about what happened up on the surface. He's not using magic to try to make her forget, but he's like trying to get her to not want to go back up there again, like type of a thing. So like, when it's a comparison is when like Triton drowns, or not drowns, tries to stop Ariel by like destroying her, grotto with all of her stuff in it. Earlier, of course, it's Ponyo starts to fall in love with Sosuke, and like when they were on the beach talking, when they were on the beach before she got wished away by Fujimoto, she started talking, and she was like, Sosuke, Ponyo loves Sosuke, and everything like that, like flipping and being very happy and all of that stuff. So he's just like, yeah, okay. First of all, as I said, if I found a fish with a face, I would be very concerned. And then now it started talking to me, and I'm like, okay, I think I've lost it. But this is a 5-year-old type of a thing. This is a 5-year-old who is like, doesn't have like that type of same logic of like, okay, something's wrong here. But yeah, so that happens. But like Fujimoto is trying to get her to like calm down, and she's like, no, I don't want that. I want ham. I want hands and feet. I want to be with Sosuke. Ponyo loves Sosuke. And she starts trying to like, so the way that it's explained, he's like, so Fujimoto is just like, I shouldn't have exposed her to like the magic. She's too young to understand what's happening. And from there, what ends up happening is, because Ponyo has been exposed to a little bit of magic, and because she ate Sosuke's blood, she licked his blood. She's now been like affected by this, and she is able to actually like make herself grow feet and grow hands. And Fujimoto is like, oh, that's not good. And he's trying to use his own power to like revert her back to, her smaller goldfish form that she is at the beginning. And he has to like run over and like drink a bunch of his different like elixir type stuff that he has off to the side, potions or whatever. And then, goes back and like he's able to like force her down to back to her like little original size. And then he like takes the bubble and like puts it back in like the area where like all of the other little sister Ponyos are, the little sister goldfishes are, and puts her back in there. And then he, heads off because he has to go and like put all of his elixirs somewhere else, so that way, back in like a safe area, so that way like a bunch of the different sea life can't get to it and everything like that, that is able to very easily get into their house, which does not seem like a wise decision. So, and then we get to see like this safe area that he has, where he's like building up all of these different elixir type stuff in a well that he's developing. And he's like, and he like drinks a little bit of the elixir as he's like pouring it in and everything like that. And he's like, ah, yes, I can feel the power of the ocean in the furthest reaches of my DNA. When this well is full, then the age of the ocean will begin again, an explosion of life to match the Cambrian age, an era of the and end the era of those abominable humans. So, as I said, Fujimoto is this human scientist that got turned in, that like became like a wizard scientist. I don't know, must have some form of connection, magic to the ocean. We never find out how old he is. We see like these different dates on like the ship that he has. It's like 1906 and stuff like that. So I just know if like, is that just stuff that he found? We don't know how long he's been married to the ocean. So, as I said, I want his backstory more than anything. Of like any of the other characters in this movie, I want his backstory. And so, like, he heads off, and he's like, I really got to get this door fixed better, because, like, it doesn't lock right. And I'm just like, foreshadowing. And from there, Ponyo ends up, her little sisters get her, like, out of the bubble, and then she, like, pops herself back into, like, where she has, like, hands and feet. And she kind of looks very like an amphibian in this regard. And she, breaks her way out of like the little dome thing that her and the sisters all live in, and like their little like coral house. She breaks out of that, and then she like lets in a bunch of water from outside, and then this just starts flooding the inside of like their underwater home thing that Fujimoto lives in, and it just starts flooding that, and like just everything gets flooded and all of that, and eventually it ends up resulting in like her like grabbing onto the safe thing. I don't know if she knows what's in the safe, but it results in like her turning it, and then it just results in like water flooding in and like filling the rest of the thing, and like just water and Ponyo power. Like she like pulls her hair to like make herself look more like a human, and she gets, you know, human hands and feet, and she looks like a human. And like her little sisters start like gathering up some of the power, and they all like manage to like escape, and they're still like, okay, let's get to the surface. And she's like, let's go find Sasuke. And she, you know, they start heading all the way up to the surface, and we get this huge bit where like all of them are rushing toward the surface, and like all of these fish are joining them, and like the little sisters are like turning into fish. And you know, they break to the surface, and they are right next to, I think it's supposed to be the father's boat, because when they break the surface, you know, there's like these giant fish that are kind of like a little bit like the fish turning into waves, type of a thing. And Ponyo is like running on top of one of them, and the dad is watching, or because he mentions that like there was like a little girl running around on that wave, and she looked to be Sasuke's age and everything like that. So like that's happening, and they're making their way toward the town. Ponyo and the fish are making their way toward the town, and this has caused this like kind of mini tsunami to result around the town, where it's just raining so hard and so much, which is clearly being affected by like what Ponyo is doing. And you know, Sosuke, it's like the next day, and like Sosuke, you know, goes, you know, it's like it's raining really really hard, and the wind's just blowing like crazy. So Sosuke leaves the school and goes over to the senior center, where you know the power has gone out, and he goes in and he starts talking to, you know, all the ladies, you know, Yoshi and, you know, Noriko and Toki and all of that stuff. And he gives them like little paper, you know, origami goldfish that he made. And then like the lights come back on, and they're like, I bet the lights came back on because Sasuke is here. And then he goes over to Toki, and he gives her, as like an apology, he gives her like a little origami version of like his dad's boat that he made, which is adorable. And, you know, so they're like all talking and everything like that. And it's time for, you know, Lisa leaves and takes Sosuke home. And, you know, as they're driving, we see just like the waves rushing over like the wall that would be like on the outside of the road that's facing the ocean, like rushing into that. It's like, of course, that wall is designed there to keep like the cars from sliding off the road and going into the water, obviously. But like the waves are like washing over that and everything, as the, you know, as Lisa and Sosuke are driving. And what ends up happening is, of course, they reach part of the area where like, so in the town, and this I would assume is very common in these towns, where they have like lots of, you know, ships that have to go through, like London has this, where like the London Bridge, you know, is designed to open up to let really big ships through, and other places have like the bridges that can be bisected and can lift up to like allow huge ships and stuff like that through. And other areas have it where they have like this very dip in like the road, where like, you know, the ship can come in, and then when it's not being used by the ships, like cars can drive through it. Lisa and Sosuke get stopped there because they're like, that part's like flooded and it should be better to stay on the other half of the island. And she's like, no, we have to go home. And she like, screw that, like drives through anyway. And like is driving her way up the hill and everything like that. And like Sosuke's like, the waves look like fish. And then he's like, there's a little girl running out there on the wave. And so like they stop, and he's like, Sosuke and Lisa are like looking out, and she's like, what little girl? And he's like, she looked like a little girl running on top of the waves. And Sosuke almost gets like pulled away by the wind, but his mom drags him back in and like drags him back into the car. And they keep driving, and the waves are essentially like following them up the path up to their up to the house on the cliff, following them up there. And what ends up happening is Sosuke, you know, they get up there, and like as they're driving past, like they're driving up there, like the bucket gets knocked off and goes flying. And then when they get out of the car, they look and they see behind the car that down the road there is this little girl standing there with like the bucket, and it's Ponyo, and she's kind of back in her little amphibian form. And Lisa goes over and tries to call her, and Ponyo just like dashes past her and dashes to Sosuke and jumps on Sosuke and just starts like, you know, nuzzling him and everything like that. which is adorable, but it's also like, okay, yeah, hug this strange girl that you don't know. Um, and Lisa's like, do you know this girl? And like we have this pausing moment where like Sosuke and Ponyo are like looking back and forth at each other, and he's like, it's Ponyo. And she's like, yeah, it's me. And the mom's like, okay, this is just getting weirder and weirder. I mean, like Ponyo is like kind of shouts out to like her sisters that are still like the fish and everything. It's like Ponyo found Sosuke. Ponyo loves Sosuke. And like so we get like this big kind of fireworks thing that happens. Although it's not fire, it's like water looking very pretty. And Lisa's just like, okay, screw this. We're going in the house. And she grabs both of the kids and jumps in, gets into the house. And she's like, okay. And like in her mind, I'm pretty sure she's like, okay, today has just gotten even weirder with everything that's going on, and now there's this little girl here that claims to have the same name as the fish that my son lost in the ocean yesterday. And okay, we're just gonna focus on things that I can control at the moment, and we're gonna leave that alone for a different time frame. So she's like, okay, time to be practical. So she's like, okay, tells the kids, okay, the world is filled with wonderful and mysterious things and all of that stuff, but we have other things to focus on. And so she's like, okay, she like, and like Ponyo was like carrying the green bucket this whole time, and Lisa's like, okay, so hold this, like, because she's like, she is set for like if there is an emergency, for like if the power goes out, if there's different things like that, water and everything like that. They're set up so that way they can be rather self-sufficient if there's like this type of an emergency where they get cut off from stuff. So she's got all of these different things set up and planned and prepped and everything like that. So as they're like going around making sure they have water, making sure that they have gas on the stove, and she gets water going so she can make tea, and she like gets a towel and tries to dry Ponyo off, but it's like it's kind of pointless because like Ponyo's not even wet, and she's like, how are you not even wet? Your clothes aren't even wet. And Sosuke's like, Ponyo was a fish, water can't make her wet. And I'm like, I don't think that's exactly how it works, but logic of a 5-year-old. And from there, they sit down and they Lisa makes them, tea and everything like that. And it's again making stuff just look really good. And, that kind of like calms Ponyo down because she's just a little bit more like, okay, what's going on here? And she like, calms down enough. And after they have their tea, then they're like, okay, let's get the generator going. So that way we can have power, so that way we can try to call Sosuke's father and let him know that we're okay. So they go and they have to get the generator going, but the generator is slightly clogged, and Ponyo actually kind of ends up using her power to fix it. And when she uses her power, she like reverts back to like the frog form again, and then back to her little girl form. By the way, the little girl form is so adorable. I love her design, and I love the fact that she still has like red hair, which is just adorable. Also, Ponyo just keeps like bouncing all over the place in the house because she's like just very like excited about what's going on. And like she doesn't want to let go of any of the things that she's been given, because like she has like the bucket she doesn't want to let go of, and she has like this light thing that she doesn't want to let go of, and she has like a towel, and she doesn't want to let go of any of that stuff because it's like she's like, it's mine now type of a thing. And at one point, and it's like, okay, this is about like the creepiest moment of the movie that I just don't like, or it's not creepy but like cringy, I guess, where Sosuke's like, you have to put the stuff down so you can eat, and she's like, I can use my feet, and like her feet start acting like hands, and I'm just like, nope, nope. That's just no. That's just really creepy. But like that happens, and then that's when they drink the tea and everything like that. But like Ponyo has like calmed down a little bit by then, and she's like more willing to put some of the stuff down. But so they get the generator going again, and they start trying to use, Lisa has like this, satellite antenna thing that she goes out and puts in the yard and everything like that. Like she's planned for all of this. Maybe they've had to use stuff before, I mean, like, they're on a coastal town, so I wouldn't be surprised if they've had to deal with like really bad storms or tsunamis or different things like that before, where they've had these issues happen, and they're like, okay, well, we need to be able to have water and gas and electricity, so they have all these backup things. They have like their own tank out back, they have the generator and everything like that for when it comes to electricity and all of that stuff. So they try, using the electricity, they get the electricity going, and they get the satellite going, or the antenna going, and they're trying to use like the radio to try to communicate, and they send out a message to Koichi saying, this is Lisa and Sosuke and Ponyo, and we're all fine. And then Ponyo just shouts ham into the microphone, which is just funny. And then they get ready to eat, and they have ramen, and Lisa ends up, putting a bunch of, ham and stuff like that in Ponyo's ramen, which just makes Ponyo very, very happy. So we have that, and then Ponyo gets very tired and sleepy and ends up just literally just falling asleep on Sosuke, and they put Ponyo on the couch. And after that, Sosuke and his mom are kind of looking out the window, and the mom goes outside, and they're just like, I sigh, she sighs. The mom and Lisa and Sosuke are looking out, and they go outside, and they're like, there's no other lights around the town. We need to, she's like, I have to go and try to see about, helping at the senior center and everything like that. So Lisa is like, okay, I need to go and do this. And she's like, she makes sandwiches and other stuff like that and leaves stuff out, so that way Sosuke and Ponyo have food waiting for them, so they at least have food ready for them, so they don't have to worry about that. And they've got food and drinks and chips and all of that stuff, so they're all taken care of that way. It's not like she's not leaving them without anything to eat. And she, he's like, but I don't want you to go. And she's like, listen, I need to go and do this. I need to go and help the people at the senior center, but you need to stay here and keep the lights going in our house, because right now it's acting as a beacon for the town. So it's at least there's something, so that they can still see wherever, there's at least still something of the town being lit up, so people can see it in the storm and see it in the waves and everything. So he's like, okay. And she's like, good boy, brave boy. Sosuke, I believe, would definitely qualify as Gryffindor, in my opinion. Ponyo might be Slytherin, with her ambition to become a human and everything like that. But, so Lisa heads off, and she's going to use a mountain pass to go get to the town, as opposed to down through the path that goes down into the town from their house. So that's where she's heading. And Sosuke ends up falling asleep after that, and then we cut outside to where we see, so Sosuke and Ponyo have fallen asleep on the couch. We cut outside to where we see Fujimoto has shown up, and he's using the wave things to get up the cliff, so that way he can try to get to the house or try to get to Ponyo. But he can't get past the fence because there's a protective spell on the fence that Ponyo either put there purposely or subconsciously, and he can't get past that. And so the wave is lifting him up higher, and he's looking through the window at where Sosuke and Ponyo are asleep on the couch. And he's just like, oh no, she's been turned into a human, this is not good. And everything like that. So he's just freaking out about that. And while this is happening, the wave starts moving, and the wave is kind of laughing, and he's like, what is going on? And he looks down, and at the bottom of the wave, around the base of the wave, all the little Ponyo sisters are there, and they're tickling the wave, and the wave is just wiggling because it's laughing so much from being tickled. And Fujimoto is just oh, respect your father, and then he falls and lands in the water. It's just I'm sorry, none of your children respect you, dude. Also, while Ponyo, Sosuke, and Lisa are either drinking the tea or eating, they have this conversation where they're just Sosuke is just we have to be able to contact my dad. And Ponyo is just is he an evil wizard? And they're like, no. No, he works on a ship out in the ocean. And Lisa's like, well, what's your dad like? And Ponyo's like, he hates you. He hates all humans, and he keeps me trapped in a bubble, so I swam away from home. And then and they're like, well, what's your mom like? And she's like, she's big and beautiful, but she can also be very scary. And Sosuke is like, just like my mom. um, oh God, I love these movies. And so it's like we get that fun bit there, and then like yeah, we cut back to where we back to present time frame where Fujimoto has landed in the ocean, and from there it ends up being, you know, Fujimoto from so that's what's going on with Fujimoto. Out at sea, we see that the ship that is like Sosuke's dad's ship, um, uh, Koichi, is there, and they're like, okay, what is going on? And they look off in the distance. They're using their binoculars to look in the distance, and they see like these line of lights, and they think maybe it's a city by a mountain. And the moon is huge at that point in time. And they like look out, and they're using the binoculars. It's like, no, that's not ships in a mountain. That's a wave being lifted up higher by the moon being closer. And those aren't mountains, or those aren't lights from a city. Those are ships that are kind of like stuck there. So they're like, oh, that's not good. And then through the water comes swimming basically this, well, giant beautiful woman with red hair and a blue dress, and she like goes under their boat, which like jump starts their boat. She swims past a bunch of the other boats, which kind of jump starts them, and then like swims up into the wave and like off. And they're like, okay, that was some form of a goddess of some kind. And they're just like start praying and everything like that, like thanking the goddess for starting their ship so now they can try to get home. So they're gonna make their way home and everything like that, and hopefully all the other ships are gonna start making their way home. From there, this is when Fujimoto is like trying to look through the window and lands in the water, and the giant woman comes there, and like all of she like shows up, and like all the little Ponyo sisters swim over to her and like start swimming around her very happily, and she like swims around the house, which is now much more of like a little island on its own at this point in time. And she comes up by the ship and starts talking to Fujimoto, and he's like, she's like, hello, my love, and everything like that. And he's just like, and her name is Grandmamare, I think is her name. Okay, full disclosure here. I don't know if she is supposed to be based off of a specific Japanese ocean goddess, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if she is. I didn't actually look, but wouldn't be surprised if she is based off of that or not, or based off of some other type of like ocean goddess of some kind, or spirit or deity or whatever. Then they just made her this for this concept. So I'm not sure about that. But so we see her starting to interact with Fujimoto, and he's like kind of like dumbstruck again, because like this is his wife. This is like he married the ocean. I mean, like that's a level of achievement very few people can swear to be able to have done. And what happens from there is they start talking. He's like explaining what's going on. He's explaining what's going on. He's just like, Ponyo, Brunhilde, she escaped and she tasted human blood, and now she's just a little girl who's in love with a little boy, and all of this other stuff, and everything's gone wrong, and like she's like this, like there's like this burst of ocean within, burst of life within the ocean, and she's like, it feels like my the ancient Devonian sea that she's like had before when she was a much younger ocean and everything like that. And what ends up happening from, so they have this conversation, and he's like starting to panic about like, the moon's coming closer, and like there's satellites falling from the sky, and blah, 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 blah. And like Fujimoto is just like panicking, and she just like touches him and just like kind of like grabs him with her giant hand, and that just kind of like calms him down enough. And like the little sisters are like all around her fingers, like telling her what's going on. Just like, the boy's name is Skay. Aww. And we want our little Ponyo to be happy and everything like that. And he's like, well, yes, but blah, blah, blah. And she like comes in really close to him, and she's like, Listen, my darling, why don't we let Ponyo become human for good? We must test the boy. If Sosuke's love is true, Ponyo will be permanently transformed and the balance of nature will be restored. And Fujimoto's like, but if his love isn't real, then Ponyo will turn into sea foam. Okay, that has to be a direct reference to The Little Mermaid, because in the original version of The Little Mermaid, one of the in the original version, the Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid, when at the end of the story, what ends up happening is, Little Mermaid, she falls in love with a human, blah 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 blah. He marries someone else. She is given the opportunity by her sisters that show up, and they bring her a knife that if she spills the blood of the prince and his new bride over her human legs, they will turn back into fins, and she can turn back into her fins, and she can rejoin her sisters in the ocean. But if she doesn't, then by morning she will become sea foam. And the Little Mermaid cannot bring herself to do this to the prince who she loves so much, and to the woman that he loves. She can't bring herself to do it. And so in the morning, at first light, she turns into sea foam. And she does get like a version of immortality as being sea foam. I think I went over some parts of that when I did the original Little Mermaid review back when I did all the Disney movies. So it's like that has to be a direct reference to that. Or I can't see it as any other way unless there's something else in Japanese mythology that has something like that there. And the ocean mob is just like, true, that is where we all originated, my darling. And he's like, the boy is so young, so innocent. So they make that decision, and they're like, okay, we're going to test, Sosuke. The next morning, Sosuke and Ponyo wake up, and they're like, okay. First of all, they whack each other in the head when they wake up, because Ponyo doesn't understand personal space. And they, they're like, okay. And they look outside, and the water is literally like at the doorstep of their back door. And they're like, okay. And they're like looking into the water and like seeing all of these giant prehistoric fish that are just swimming around and everything like that. And they're like, okay. And she's like, well, where's your mom? And he's like, well, she left last night to try to go and get to the senior center. And he's like, okay. And she's like, well, let's go find her. And she's like, okay. And he's like, well, how are we going to get there? There's no boat. She's like, but we have a boat. And she points at his little toy boat. And he's like, but it's too small. And she's like, no, it's not. And she goes over and she uses her power. And again, she reverts back to her, kind of amphibian looking form, and like pops the boat much bigger. So now it's big enough for the both of them. So they get the boat going and everything like that, and all set and ready and all of that. And they grab all of their provisions, the sandwiches and everything else, and all of that, and they head off. And while this is going on, while they're getting all of this done, all these like sea creatures are like by their house. There's like a crab climbing up the wall of their house. There's like an octopus trying to like get in the door. And I'm like, you're gonna have to explain this to someone when you get home. So that's all happening. And as they're sailing by, they're like looking down into the water underneath them, because the water is like so clear and pretty, and they're like seeing all these ancient fish and everything like that, and they're like saying all the names of the different fish and everything like that, which my nephew would love because he adores dinosaurs and prehistoric things and all of that type of stuff. And all of that. So like they're like naming all of that stuff as they go, and then they end up coming across this other boat that has a married couple and their little baby in the boat. And they're like talking, and like the lady recognizes Sosuke because she like takes her baby to the same daycare that he stays at for like the preschool type thing and all of that. So like she recognizes him, and they're like talking, and Ponyo kind of like has this like moment where she like connects with the baby and ends up kind of pulls out like their thermos and cup and like is like trying to give them soup. And, the mom drinks the soup, and Ponyo goes, no, it's for him, pointing at the baby. And the mom's like, oh, well, he's a little too young to be able to have this, but I can drink it, and then I can use it to make milk for him. And Ponyo, like, kind of pauses on that for a moment, and Sasuke's like, yeah, my mom did that for me when I was a baby. And Ponyo's like, okay. And so, like, the mom drinks the soup and everything like that, and then Ponyo also gives him a bunch of the sandwiches, which, as Sasuke says, it's okay if you take those. She already ate all of the ham out of them. So, yeah, there's that. And they're getting ready to sail off, or they're getting ready to depart. And while that's happening, a bunch of these other boats start coming by that have a bunch of the other citizens from the town in them, because like the town is pretty much just all underwater at this point in time. And so it's like all these people manage to get out of their houses and they're safe and everything like that. So like they're all sailing past and they're like, we're all meeting up at the hotel over this way because it's it's a high enough point that the water hasn't covered it yet. And please follow us if you would like, and everything like that. So it's like the parents and the baby, the little family unit, are gonna head off with those guys. And like the dad of the family unit gives Sosuke like another candle, because the boat is kind of like run by like water going through part of the thing, and then like it gets heated up by like the little candle to like power the boat. So it's like they need another candle since the one that they have is kind of burning down. And so like they're getting ready to sail off, and Ponyo then notices that like something is up with the baby, and she like jumps off their little boat, dashes across the water over to where the baby is, and this is just like nuzzling the baby's forehead with her own, and pulls away. She kind of like turned into her amphibian form in this one again a little bit. So I'm going to explain that. So every time she turns into the little amphibian form is when she's using magic, because there's a line by her father earlier on that is like, you can't be human and magic at the same time. They're two very separate things in this regard. So anytime she uses her power, she like reverts to like the little frog thing while she's using it, and then she like goes back to normal, or goes back to her like human form. And so like she uses her power to like, the baby is like, I guess has a cold, and she like uses her power to like unclog, unblock whatever it was that was like affecting the baby. So the baby just, kind of starts, is going to get better now, and she dashes back to their boat and they head off. And while they're heading off, like one of the other like military guys or Navy guys or whatever that's like part of like the ship brigade that's heading back by, the little boat brigade that's heading back by, like salute Sosuke, and Sosuke salutes him as like they're heading off, and they start making their way the rest of the way. During this time frame, we have this moment where so Sosuke and Ponyo are still sailing off and making their way through the island, because they need to make their way to where the mountain road is, so that way they can try to get to where Lisa would have been driving through. While this is happening, we cut down to where this like park area where they would have taken the senior citizens should there be any type of a tsunami where the water gets too high, and they would have taken the senior citizens here so that way they would be in a safe area and at least out of the water. We see a bunch of empty wheelchairs there, and we go into the water where we see like the whole town underwater, and we see the senior center is covered in this kind of, it's kind of reminiscent of like a jellyfish to a degree, and it has it so that way all of the people that are inside of it can like breathe underwater and they're fine, and like all of the old women are kind of like rejuvenated a bit. Like they still are old, but like they have like their youthful energy back, and like a bunch of their joint pain and stuff like that is gone. God, I wish it would work that way. If I was like, okay, I'm gonna dive into the pool, oh, my joints feel better, and then come back up and then have like more energy. I wish that was how it worked. But they're being affected by like all of the magic stuff that was like in the water from like Fujimoto's experiments and everything like that. And so like they're all running around and having fun and everything like that. Well, 6 of them are. Toki is not there. We specifically do not see Toki. The one that was in like the automatic wheelchair, like always like going against, it's a more kind of a grumpy old lady, crotchety old lady. So like they're all running around, and they're talking, and Fujimoto is down there, and he's talking with them, and they're like, he's like, okay, now you're all gonna bear witness to this, this moment with Sosuke and Ponyo. And they're like, you won't let anything happen to Sosuke and Ponyo. And they're like, oh, no, it's not in his nature, is like what one of them says. And he's like, no, my hope is that Ponyo will sleep through the entire thing. It's like, okay, good luck with that. And what ends up happening is, so Fujimoto goes off to head up to the surface to get Sosuke and Ponyo. And from there, we have it that we have the old ladies look over and they see that, like, Lisa is talking to Grandmere, and, like, under, like, this other kind of, like, mini jellyfish thing. And they're like, they've been talking all night long. And so, like, they wave at Lisa, and Lisa comes over and, like, I guess starts talking with them and everything like that. So Ocean Mom is, like, explaining to Human Mom what's going to happen and everything like that. And they're like, okay, they've been talking for a while, so yeah. So Lisa is fine. That is what that scene is supposed to show, that Lisa is fine. And then we cut back to where Ponyo and Sosuke are. And they are making their way through this other area. And Ponyo actually ends up falling asleep because she gets very tired of, like, using the magic that she's been using, and then just gets tired in general in this regard. It's also 5, and, as much as it seems like 5-year-olds have unlimited energy at times, they do burn out. And she falls asleep, and they end up, as she, Sosuke is, then, like, pushing the boat because, like, the candle burned down, and she didn't have the, the power to, like, make another big candle for them to keep going, so he's physically swimming and pushing the boat at the same time. And when they just about reach where he can touch, the boat starts to shrink. And, so he's, like, getting Ponyo to the shore, where, to the shore side, or to, like, where the water ends, so that way she's not going to drown. Admittedly, she is still technically a fish to a degree at this point in time. So I don't know if she would drown or not, but let's not test that theory. And he gets her over there, and, like, the boat shrinks back to normal and everything like that. And so Ponyo kind of fell asleep that way, and she's safe on, like, because, like, where they ended up is, like, a road that's, like, the mountain pass that they were trying to get to anyway. And he sees his mom's car, so Ponyo is safe for the moment on the ground, and he sees his mom's car and runs over and tries, she's not in the car, he's looking around, he's shouting for her and everything like that, and, like, the, mom, mommy, where are you, type of a thing. And I watched this with my mom last night, and she's like, yeah, that's acting like a real 5-year-old, because, like, Sosuke has been acting, like, so grown up for a good portion of the movie, in regards to, like, responsibility and everything like that. And now it's like, okay, now he's a little bit more like, this is, like, the actual kid coming out that's like, I want my mommy type of a thing. And I don't blame the kid in the slightest. Ponyo kind of wakes up, comes over to him, and finds out what's going on. And she's like, come on, let's keep looking. And they start heading up the path more. Because it's like, well, maybe the car died, so she had to keep walking on her own to keep going because she couldn't go back the other way. And they keep walking, and they come to a tunnel, and as they're going through the tunnel, Ponyo starts to revert back to, like, shrinking, reverting into the frog form, shrinking more. Sosuke is, like, picking her up and just, like, running at full speed, with, like, her, with, like, she's still holding the bucket through all of this time. She's been holding onto her little green bucket the whole time, and he's, like, running to get out of the cave as fast as he can, because if she turns back into the fish form, she's going to need water, or at least that's what he's thinking, and I'm assuming that's the case. And he, brushes her out, and he gets to the cave, and he gets to, like, the edge where there is more water, and he, like, scoops her up into the, gets her into the bucket and into the water and everything like that. And at this point, Fujimoto shows up, and is trying to get Sosuke to come with him. He's like, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to hurt Ponyo or anything like that. I just, I'm going to take you to where your mother is and where all the other old ladies are and everything like that. And, like, Ponyo is asleep at this point in time. And she's reverted back to, like, the little goldfish form. And at this point in time, Toki, the other old lady who is not down by the senior center anymore, is, like, up in, like, the park area, and she's like, no, don't listen to him, Sosuke. He took your mother and all the others with him by tricking them and blah, 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 blah. And, all this other stuff. So, like, Sasuke is, like, trying to run to Toki. And Fujimoto is, like, pointing at the moon and going, "Don't you see the giant moon, woman? If that comes any further, it's going to crush us and drown everything." And she's like, "A falling moon? That's your best excuse?" um, so that's happening. And so, like, Sosuke is trying to run to where Toki is, and so Toki's trying to get to Sosuke, and Sosuke is being chased by, like, the little wave things from Fujimoto. Again, he is not trying to hurt them or anything like that. He's trying to get them to come down so that way they can go talk to Ponyo's mother and everything there, Grandmere, and all of that stuff. And, so Sosuke is running, and Toki is trying to get to him, and Sosuke kind of, like, trips on, like, this, like, bar thing that he's running on, and Ponyo's bucket with all the water in it, with Ponyo in the bucket, like, water just kind of, like, comes out and, like, falls and, like, hits Toki in the face, and Toki manages to catch Sosuke. They fall into the water as the waves hit them, and then all the little, so Fujimoto is, like, diving after them on his little, propeller thingy that he has. And all the little Ponyo sisters rush over, and, like, they make this giant kind of air bubble around Sosuke and Toki and Ponyo, and then help lead them over to where the underwater dome thing is, around the senior center where everybody else is, where, all the old people are, and the sea goddess and everything like that are, and Lisa are. Brings them into there, and, like, safely delivers Sosuke into his mother's arms with, Ponyo in the bucket, and safely delivers Toki to the other old women. And so they're all safe. We have this thing where, like, Toki is, like, thinks she has to keep swimming in the water once she realizes what's going on, and then she's just like, "Oh, I guess I don't have to do that." And, like, realizing that they can all breathe underwater and everything like that. And Sosuke is, like, so happy to see his mom, and then he looks over and he sees Ponyo's mother, and he figures out that that's Ponyo's mom. And she's like, "Yes, I am Ponyo's mom." And she's like, and, like, they have this whole conversation where, like, she explains that, like, "Sosuke, Ponyo opened a magic well because she wanted very much to be human, to become a real girl. She needs you to accept and love her as she truly is. You know that Ponyo is a fish, don't you? And you know her, and you know her as a human. Your drop of blood did that." He's like, "Oh, that's it. I cut my thumb, then Ponyo licked it and made it better. So that's how she changed into a human." And Ponyo's mother is just like, "Could you love her if she moved between two worlds?" And he's like, "I love all the Ponyos. It's a big responsibility, but I really love her." And I'm like, okay, I love the sincerity in the kid, but it's just like, it's the fairy tale thing of, like, you have known each other for, like, 2 days. And, I mean, this is coming from the person that, like, adores different fairy tale stuff, for fairy tales in general, with, like, the happy endings of, like, the couple kisses and everybody's safe and everybody's happy and all of this other stuff, and, the Disney versions of the fairy tales where, like, they do more and more of, like, making them actually get to know each other as time goes by and go through these different tests, and, as opposed to just, like, oh, the whole Snow White thing of, like, saw him once at the beginning of the movie, saw the girl at the end of the movie, and then kissed her and woke her up and everything like that, when it's like you barely talked to her, if anything. It's like, at least Ponyo and Sosuke have spent a bit of time together in this regard. And so Ponyo kind of gets a little bit of, like, a scolding by her mother, where she swims over and, swims over to her mom. I mean, like, she kind of, like, swims very happily around Sosuke and Lisa and everything like that, and then swims over to her own mother, where she kind of looks slightly like she's going to get scolded. And she's like, "Okay, to do this, you have to give up all of your power, Ponyo, and you will be able to be with Sosuke." And then she, like, puts Ponyo into, like, this little bubble and gives it back to Sosuke in the bucket. And she's like, "When you get back to the surface, kiss the bubble, and Ponyo will become a real girl. It will complete Ponyo's transformation and everything like that, and the balance of nature will be restored." And they're like, "Okay." And then, from there, like, all the, Lisa's, like, hugging Sosuke, and, like, all the other old women come over, and, like, they're all hugging Lisa and Sosuke, and, all of that stuff. and they're all just like really happy, and like all the little Ponyo sisters come over and they start like, I guess they're like, they like kind of all get to say goodbye to Ponyo, and like they all whoosh everybody out and like start whooshing everybody back to the surface. Um, and like we get back to the surface where like the water is starting to recede a lot, and all the old women are able to just like easily walk up out of the water, which is just funny. To the befuddlement of some of the other people that are like trying to help them, or like the old women are just like walking up out of the water. It's like, we don't need our wheelchairs anymore, we're fine, and all of that stuff. So they're heading up that way, and they see Koichi's ship showing up. So Lisa is just like, oh, yay, and she's like waving and everything like that at like her husband's ship to see them and everything. And then Ponyo is just kind of like, okay, I don't want to wait for this, and she bounces out of the bucket in the bubble and lands and like kisses Sosuke, makes him like kiss the bubble, and then it pops, and then she turns into her human form, and like that's kind of like the last bit of the movie is like seeing Sosuke, Ponyo in her human form like floating above Sosuke for the moment, for the last bit. So it's just like we have that whole bit there, which is just an adorable way to end the movie. Give me one moment while I pull up my cast list, and then we'll go over this. I mentioned several of them already, but so that's how the movie ends. Is Ponyo gets turned back into a human, and if you go by the fairy tale logic, eventually it's they grow up, they spend there's this one thing that I did want to go over that I skipped a second was when they're all getting sent back to the surface, getting whooshed back to the surface and everything like that, with like the ocean mommy with Grand Mamira, whatever it is. I can't pronounce it. Starts wishing them all back to the surface. She says good luck to Lisa, and Lisa's like, don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Because it is kind of like this mother entrusting her daughter to this other woman who she kind of barely knows, but has like clearly proven that she will take care of Ponyo. So it's just like they have that whole connection there. And I like how they show that in the end of the movie. But like kind of, you have to like assume that like, eventually it's, Ponyo and Sosuke grow up, and maybe eventually they get married. And I've seen adorable fan art that they've made of like Sosuke and Ponyo on their way to school when they're like in like middle school or high school or whatever. And like Fujimoto is like following them in the water because like he keeps complaining about like humans being disgusting and everything like that. But with all their filth and everything like that, and so like he's not wrong, and he's like watching them, like still being the overprotective father in that regard, and all of that stuff. And the thing is that it's like it's not like Ponyo necessarily has to give up her relationship with her father. It just means that she can't go back really. And she can still go into the water and swim and everything like that. It's just that she can't have magic anymore. She can't shift back and forth and use her powers anymore. So it's not only is Sosuke having to promise to love Ponyo, it's also Ponyo is having to give up her power so that way she can become human, because it's like you can't be human and magic at the same time in this regard, which basically just means that Fujimoto is not human because he has magic. As I said, I still want his backstory. So going into this, into the cast list, to finish out here. So Lisa is voiced by Tina Fey, which is adorable. Koichi is voiced by Matt Damon. Grandmamere is voiced by Cate Blanchett. Fujimoto is voiced by Liam Neeson, as I said. Ponyo is voiced by Noah Cyrus, who is the much younger sister of Miley Cyrus. And I believe now actually has a singing career of her own. And then Sosuke is voiced by Frankie Jonas, who is the younger brother of all of the three Jonas brothers. And actually, the credits for the movie, as the credits play for the English dub, they have Noah and Frankie singing the Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea song, which is just adorable as they're like singing it over the credits. So they have that. We have Lily Tomlin, as I said, is Toki. We have Betty White as Yoshi. There's not really anybody else. Cloris Leachman, love Cloris Leachman, plays Noriko, who's one of the other older ladies there. And there's not really anything else. I do want to point out that Colleen O'Shaughnessy, I think I said that correct, plays a character named Karen, who is, I think, just one of the other hospital or one of the other like senior center workers or whatever that's there. The reason I point her out is because if I'm remembering correctly, she either plays Sora or Biyomon in Digimon, in like Digimon Adventures. If I'm remembering correctly, she plays one or the other. She is like connected to that setup where she plays those certain characters in Digimon in that regard. But I think it's Sora, but I don't quote me on that one. But so it's like they have that whole setup there, so that's just like really fun there. For all of that connection there for those characters. This is much more one of the innocent versions or innocent things for like a Miyazaki movie. So I do love this movie. It is still beautifully designed and beautifully written and animated and everything like that. And it is such a very good little story about like, the ocean trying to fight back against man, but also like Ponyo wanting to be free and all this other stuff. So I love all of that setup that they have there. So that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. It actually ended up being longer than I wanted it to. I was just like, oh, this is a shortish movie for Miyazaki. It won't take that long. I was wrong. Bye.